diverse voices in the energy revolution. Here's your host, Amy Simpkins.
Welcome back to the Power Flow podcast. I'm your host, Amy Simpkins, and bringing you another episode about what's going on to move the clean energy economy forward and highlight amplifying diverse voices in this energy revolution. Today, I'm talking to Janette Freeman. She is passionate about saving the landfill from the millions of solar panels which will be coming to end of life in the years ahead. Janette is the Director of Business Development for Fabtech Solar Solutions, which does solar panel refurbishing and recycling, giving panels a second life or proper cremation. Prior to working in renewables, she worked in personal development training and coaching. That is very near and dear to my heart, actually. And she is the author of 3 books and has a doctorate of consciousness studies. We're going to go there in a second. But Janette, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Amy. Great to be here with you. Love what you're doing.
Well, I think, what you're coming here today to talk about, end of life for solar generation equipment is such a hot topic right now, because I think there's a faction out there that wants to talk about green energy not really being green. And so because of the fact of what happens at end of life and what can you recycle, what can you not recycle. So I'm really excited for this conversation today. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do in particular and what Fabtech does for solar end of life?
You bet. And I'm excited that we're talking about it too. So thanks so much. Fabtech is a company that does solar panel refurbishing and solar panel recycling. So we work to be able to make the process as simple as possible. And of course, this is all new. I mean, the company itself has been in business 22 years, but we got into solar panels about 5 or 6 years ago because we were in refurbishing of IT equipment. So it was a natural evolution with the company's president, which happens to be my brother-in-law. And so he got these solar panels, right? Somebody says, hey, what can you do with these solar panels? And so he figured out how to fix them, and they ended up getting into the whole solar business to be able to give solar panels a second life, basically, to be able to give them a second life, because we know that solar panels were built to last 25 to 30 years, and sometimes they're lasting a lot longer than that, right? But many times, and we can go into it later, they come off the field, or they something happens, a weather event or that sort of thing, and then they become done with their use, but there's a second use. So we do fixing of the solar panels, cleaning, repurposing, and then selling the solar panels to do-it-yourselfers, RVers, off-gridders, and people that normally can't afford solar and solar panels can get into a solar panel for, whatever, $50-$60. So we do that. And then we got into recycling. Recycling is a very important part of this piece of this puzzle. All right. So we've developed partnerships with EPA approved correct solar panel recyclers so that we can process and facilitate correct recycling throughout the country, because the other issue that makes it not work is freight. Okay, because solar panels are so big and heavy, it's very expensive to ship them to one recycler in the country. Okay, so basically, that's the picture that Fabtech handles. Is we call it a one-stop shop. And we take the solar panels, we ship them in, and I work with them to decide where that is and sort them. And if we can salvage any of those solar panels whatsoever, we will, and we'll pay the customer for those solar panels, anything that can be saved. Okay. So we pay them for solar panels that can have a second use, and for recycling, anything that is at its end of life, and that's usually broken glass. If the solar panel is broken glass, it's done. And there are some other things as well, but mostly that's it. And then that has to go to the recycler. So then we process and send that directly to the recycler, and there is a charge for recycling. Recycling is still expensive. Okay. So the refurbishing piece actually helps recycling happen. It helps offset those costs. Because even if I get a load of, let's just use a number, 100 solar panels, but I can salvage 20 of those, well, maybe, it costs $15 to $20 to recycle one solar panel, right? And maybe I can pay them $35 for a solar panel that I can fix and repurpose. And so that basically helps to offset the cost and makes the decision for recycling happen. Because so many times the decision to recycle is very difficult for companies to make when they can put it in the landfill for $1, okay? And then it costs them $20 to recycle that solar panel. So I get it.
Yeah. I have so many questions. This is going to amazing conversation here. Let's go back. Let's talk first about refurbishment. When people bring you solar panels, what is indicating to them that they're at end of life for their application? Are they seeing performance degradation, or are they actually seeing like non-working or breaking equipment? Like, what's happening there?
Sure. Well, one of the big ones that we see are at the end of construction. So right when the site is built, or when a large scale site is happening, during construction, there is always breakage rate. Okay. So solar panel gets broken, damaged during installation. And most of those is broken glass. That is the challenge with that. Most of that type of damage is broken glass, but not all of it. Some of it's broken, damaged frames. Sometimes they've got a little bit of damage and they don't want to put it on because later on it could bring, more damage to the site. So construction. The other thing, exactly, physical parts are not working efficiently, so they're pulled off the site. It could be a desire to upgrade the system. We'll be seeing a lot more of that in the future. Upgrade the present PV technology. Maybe they were 250 watts, but now they can get 400 watts and pretty soon 500 watts. So it becomes financially worthwhile to be able to do an upgrade on that system. And then we're seeing a lot of weather damage, hail damage, fire damage, hurricane damage. So weather issues come into play, and in all these instances, then you have to decide, what are you going to do with these solar panels?
Definitely. So how does Fabtech determine what is salvageable? Is there diagnostic testing, performance evaluation?
Yes. There's a preliminary, and it's pretty good. There's a preliminary sort that we do, which is basically based only on visual inspection of the solar panel. Like, let's say we ship them into one of our sorting facilities, and the technicians are just trained to look at them first. And most of it is either broken glass or not broken glass. Okay, so broken glass means recycling. Not broken glass means option to be refurbishable. All right. So we will usually base our determination at that point to the customer that it's refurbishable or not. Then because it may not get to the next stage of testing for a while, and we want to be able to pay the customer. We want to be able to get the recycling done. We want to be able to finalize that out. But a visual inspection, the other thing is we might be able to see that the back sheet is so badly burned that it's going into damaging the cell internally, and we're not sure that that's going to be something that works. So we might do some spot testing right away to find out if that's a problem. Okay. But basically broken glass and some, deep back sheet and cell delineation.
So I'm curious about the second market for these. And this is actually a topic that's personally near and dear to my heart. We do a lot of, just as a family here, we do a lot of second market stuff, including used vehicles. In fact, we just purchased our first electric vehicle. It is a first generation Nissan Leaf from 2012. It's 9 years old. It's got 46,000 miles on it. And, I think there's a view out there, particularly, batteries and EVs are a whole other animal, but there's, all this green tech in general of like, well, gosh, what are you really getting when you buy something used? And that's something like we're proving to ourselves as a family that like, no, there's a lot of life left in this vehicle. There's a lot of life left in this battery. Like, can you drive 250 miles on a charge like the new ones? No, you can't. Is it useful for driving the kids to school every day? Yes, absolutely. We can do that. And it's already, our model, we're modelers over here. Our model is working. Like we are tracking like the number of trips and like how much money it's saving. And so part of what I want to say to the listeners is like, there is a second market for these things. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about, you already mentioned a little bit like RVers and DIYers, which is great. We are total DIYers over here in this house. But specifically like who are they? And then like, how does that work is Fabtech doing the resale or do you have like reselling partners that are accessing the second market?
Thanks for asking that. And what's so funny that I love that you tied in the used car market, and because that's exactly how we can frame this and how it's framed is as we look at if we could imagine early vehicles, right? And they were just being sold as new cars. And then there were so many that were in the marketplace. And now we've got some years there. Then used cars came in and they were a very important part of that. It enabled people to drive and get a car. They couldn't get one before, right? And this is the same model that's happening with solar. All right. Solar is, and especially, for the homeowner, right? The homeowner is expensive, right? And a lot of people don't have it on their home. Somebody will come in and $30,000 to put on something on your home. So, the secondary market creates the opportunity for people to get into solar. Now, a lot of times with these panels, they have to go off grid, right? You have to go off grid. And so, if they're used. And so, most of the people are off gridders. They have a little bit of skill or knowledge, or they know how to turn on YouTube and figure out how. And we've got good technicians on that side that are always helping customers to figure out how many panels they need and do they need an inverter and how many volts, and they know a lot more about the technical aspects of solar than I do for sure. But these customers are our main office is in Arizona, and I don't know if you've ever heard of this place called Quartzite in Arizona, but it's like all these people that live out of their vans and create these vans where there's like miles of this federal land that they can go park their RV on for free and live on this land. And it's about an hour from here. And so we have had so many of those customers come over and buy solar panels, and the word gets out on their YouTube channels and that sort of thing to come and get solar panels and get your systems and get it all figured out. So Fabtech doesn't do that. Fabtech is the company that finds these, that pays somebody for these solar panels, that recycles these solar panels, and then our sister company is a completely different company that sells the solar panels, okay, and has their own branding and their own name and their own thing, and we don't tie that together here, but they are able to. That's how we're able to pay for these solar panels, and we have that infrastructure because we had that infrastructure before in the IT marketplace. So it's not easy to build, right? It's not like any other business. It's not easy to build a customer base. So we've been able to build a customer base on that side of the company that sells these solar panels to the marketplace. And then, we also have sold solar panels overseas, and we've also donated panels overseas. And that's another thing that we do, like working with organizations that are providing solar panels overseas to these, communities that are building orphanages or schools or things like that and can organize that. So, so does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it sounds like there are lots of options for Second Life. Lots of different paths they can take. And, it's something that I think people who are going to, so I work mostly on the front side of projects, right? We work on like the feasibility analysis and the modeling and then the preliminary design to say to customers, like commercial and industrial customers, how big should your system be? And, we have a couple different kinds of customers when it comes to like end of life. There's the customer that doesn't want to think about it at all. Like they see their system in their mind is like new and shiny, and it will be new and shiny forever, right? And then we have customers that are really concerned about end of life and what decommissioning looks like and how much that's going to cost, and then what happens. And it's something that I think we as like the modelers haven't had a great answer for, of like how to model the cost of that. And you mentioned the cost of recycling versus the cost of disposal. And so I was wondering if you could talk about it, just, educate me, a person who works in the industry, who's really interested in like I model the total life cycle of a project, what would you like to tell me as terms of how to think about end of life and recycling?
Well, first of all, I'd say think about it.
Don't ignore it. That is the first step to recovery.
Like, don't ignore it. I mean, it is a part of the whole picture, and this whole clean energy is what industrial age was a long time ago, and with that industrial age came a lot of waste. Nobody thought about any of that, right? Nobody thinks it that far ahead, and that's
how we got where we are, right?
And
it's
that's
like
how we got.
In the industrial age, no one thought about disposal. Oops.
Right. Oops. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're already ahead by thinking about it, and anyway, so we always say, have an end of life plan. An end of life plan basically means that you're going to get the mindset that you are going to have some expense for recycling and budgeting for recycling, and you are going to have an asset at the end if at all possible. Most decommissions and most repowering, those panels are fine, and they are an asset. And you can get, I do quotes all day long for people that are planning for decommissions. And if they're going to decommission in the next years, we can give them a pretty good quote on what their panels are worth. We can get a pretty good quote on freight, although we hope it'll go down. But, so an end of life plan basically means you're thinking about it, and there are great decommission contractors. We work with several that will come in and do an estimate and figure out what kind of equipment you have and what's it going to cost to break it down, and what are the assets. You're going to have some assets as far as the solar panels, but you're also going to have some scrap metal waste that it's worth something, from that recycling they'll pay you for that raw material. But other than that, it's a cost, right? It's gonna cost to take it down, but just, we use the word make an end of life plan. You don't want to be sitting at the end of life going, now what do I do? That's why, Fabtech's in this. We're keeping our nose to the ground. We're planning for what will be happening in the future. We are working with large companies right now to help handle these issues. And when you make an end of life plan, you may not be doing it right now, but it would be really nice that you've already, got a partner that you've done some things with and that you trust. So then when you have these big things, you're like, oh, I'm just going to call Janette, okay? Because I've already worked with her and I know what happens and I know what to do. So I'm interested in building those kind of partnerships for the long run. And I know that customers do too. You don't want to be sitting there on this end of this project and think, oh, now I got to look for vendors, right, to be able to handle all of this. So, but again, it's like thinking about it. And I will say this, that I've worked with a lot of the major companies and their environmental departments that are doing that. We're going through, all the due diligence and onboarding to be able to, so that the environmental departments are comfortable with what they're going to do with end of life as it's coming.
Totally. And I think those long-term relationships are especially important over, projects that are expected to have, like you said, a 25 to 30 year life cycle at least. And so I love that. We're going to take a quick break here. And when we come back, I'm going to talk to Janette a little bit about her personally and how she came into this, and then the view from her chair. Don't miss it. We're back here on the Power Flow podcast. Today, we're talking to Janette Freeman of Fabtech, which does solar panel refurbishing and recycling. We're talking about project end of life. But I really wanted to talk to you personally, Janette. Your bio, of course, jumped straight out at me that you worked in personal development, training, and coaching, which is an area that I actually, even though my educational background is aerospace engineering, I also did a turn in personal development and coaching. I wrote a book. My book Spiral is half for like tech business development entrepreneurs, and it's just half a personal development book. And I love that you have a doctorate of consciousness studies. So I just wanted to ask you really quick here. Tell me a little bit more about yourself and how you came in, like what triggered the transition to jump from doing what you were doing in personal development, which is also a very important line of work, empowering humans to show up as their best selves. And then now you're over here in energy doing more important work in not more, but additional important work in clean energy. And I know in my own career path, people sometimes look at that and they're like, what? So I'm really curious for you how it went and what brought you here.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, first of all, I started 30 years ago in my consciousness education, which was everything from psychology to spirituality to completely understanding, not completely, but trying to understand the mind and how it is that we affect our environment around us, right? Like, who am I being on the inside that affects my experience on the outside? And worked in it over 20 years and taught a lot of classes and did a lot of this stuff. Like anybody else, it doesn't matter how great it is and how much you love it. Sometimes you just feel like something else, like
Hallelujah.
Like sometimes it's just
Yes.
like been there, done that. I mean, I've taught this a million times and I'm just, and my personality is very entrepreneurial, and I started, meditation centers, and I started things, so I like the start and the creation process. So I'm interested in the creation process, and I hadn't been in the creation process for many years. So that was kind of a piece of that burnout that I really did experience. And when you're burned out, your energy's down and you're not really being of service to people. You're just, you try not to show that you're burned out, but you kind of are. Anyway, so the transition really, like I mentioned, Fabtech is a family business. It's been in a long time. It's my brother-in-law and my sister, that had this company. And so I watch them from the sideline and always talking to them. We're all very close. And this business just kept growing and growing, and they're hiring and they're doing all this stuff. And I was, wow, that's so interesting. And I've always been interested in the planet and the environment and the evolution of consciousness of humanity, and where are we going and how are we dealing with these issues and what's our responsibility. So it was in my purpose wheel, so to speak. And so, kind of on a whim, I just talked to them and I said, I have a certain degree of skills, and I don't know if there's anywhere that my skills would intersect with this company to be able to work together. So would you guys think about it? And so they thought about it and they came back and offered me a job and wanted me to come and take the lead at Fabtech to build the relationships in the utility marketplace, the large scale development, and to build relationships with people that are in this and to spread the word and to, really continue to build our infrastructures around that. And so through the last year, we've really got systems in place and stretched out on the marketing. And because I'm comfortable speaking in public, I'm comfortable doing podcasts, I'm comfortable writing, I'm comfortable being in business development, it was a perfect fit. And it was so much fun, really, for me to be able to say, oh, this is great. This is my baby. And they just give me complete, they're like, here, we're so glad you're here. And what do you think we should do, Janette? So I love that, because it doesn't cramp my entrepreneurial spirit. It lets my spirit soar and stay in that creative space. And I'm very passionate about providing a solution and building awareness so that we are thinking about it, we are planning for it, that we are budgeting for recycling, that we're making a plan for it as we move forward. Because if we don't, we're going to have a problem. I mean, millions and millions of solar panels. And I mean, I just dealt with someone that didn't want, I was going to actually even pay them, but they're taking 45,000 solar panels and putting them in the landfill. 45,000. So when I think of 45,000 solar panels, which are hard to break down in one landfill, what happens when you start thinking of millions of solar panels that are coming off and that will be coming off? It is said that I heard it on the SPI show digital version yesterday, so I don't know who it came from, but it was projected that there would be 1 gigabyte of panels coming off in decommissioning next year.
Ooh, yeah.
So that's when we start talking about the numbers that are coming in the future, we got to get things in place to be able to be to not be creating another problem.
Right. Well, thank you for sharing your story. You are a kindred spirit. I mean, in case that wasn't obvious already,
Yeah, right.
I love the, you talked about the evolution of human consciousness, and to me, like this paying attention to how we impact the planet and still can support humans at the same time with energy, is an evolution of human consciousness, right? And so it's very congruent and it all fits in together. And I also think that the other thing that jumped out at me from the wonderful things that you said was about the building relationships piece, that the technology is awesome and it's cool. And we're all working on various forms of technology and how to make it better and more reusable and cleaner and all of this stuff. But really how these projects get done is on relationships. Like it's human to human conversations, collaborations, like being willing to show up for each other. And so I think we can't ever lose sight of that, right? That like it's about humans fundamentally.
Right. That's right. I love that. And the more remember that.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
The more that we remember that, we bring a higher value of ourself. Everybody is fed by positive human interaction.
Yeah, totally. And so then we move forward with more joy and less despair about the situation.
And then more joy brings more solutions, because then we're in alignment with, more solutions and creativity. We can't be creative. We can't be innovative and creative and get ideas for greater solutions while we're in the middle of the problem.
Absolutely.
And negative and in the middle of the problem. We've got to get above the problem in order to find new solutions. And in an emerging new idea, and in an emerging new field like clean energy, we have to be open to inspiration and innovation. And this comes from ideas that have not been fully manifested yet, right? Like new ideas. So it's just like positive workspaces. People are getting that. Positive workspaces create more creativity and more innovation, and that's just a thing.
And then you're in a positive feedback loop.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
that's
more
right.
joy, more ideas that lead to more joy. Yes, and let's go there instead of like the death spiral of of despair. Wow. Yeah. I love, totally speaking my language there. So from there and from that frame, though, let's touch on the challenges, like what from your chair and all that we've talked about, both, your work like at Fabtech in particular with recycling and refurbishment, and also your personal, experience, your personal belief system about humanity. What do you feel are the biggest challenges we're facing as an industry toward, between us and this new clean energy economy?
I think the biggest challenge has in the past been, and still is, human beings' unwillingness to see something new and to address it. And we've seen this with this resistance to even looking at climate changes happening, right? And so human beings don't like change, and they hold on to things. But so there's that human resistance that has been an issue. And I think that is overcome by enough people that aren't doing that. And we see that too. There's enough leaders and movement, and things are shifting and changing to move us in a new direction.
And so from your chair, then, how do we stay in that space, that positive feedback loop of joy, innovation, joy, as opposed to the despair, death spiral. Because I have felt, and I felt it myself, this summer when the Oroville Dam in California shut down for lack of water resource. I had a moment. I had the moment of like, I don't think we are nearly scared enough. But I'm also now I'm reading Saving Us by Catherine Hayhoe, which is all about how we have these conversations with people who are like, climate change, I don't know, human caused, I don't know. How do we have those conversations to create more awareness? And so I'm curious from your perspective, because you have such a rich, a rich thought process and a rich body of experience. How do we take the first right steps towards that?
Well, I'm going to take us right back to kind of what you said, is that when we are focusing and hearing about all the problems that are having, our mind can't move into a solution mindset. The most difficult thing I have found is I have to keep feeding myself. I have to read inspirational material. I have to listen to inspirational material like this. I have to hang out with positive people. I have to work on my own mindset first, because that's the only way that I can attract and create and be effective in anything I do. And I let me share this example. This is years ago, and I want to say 20 years ago, and I wasn't paying any attention to the environment, really. I was just doing my thing, and I was really teaching people about staying in this higher awareness and stuff. And I had one of my students that was she was awesome, but she was a real activist and a climate activist, and she'd be like, what are we going to do? I mean, there's all these problems. And I was way Pollyanna for her, because I was like, well, I know that if we just keep working on our internal, we're going to know what to do at the right time. Right. And I could hear her thinking, yeah, but are you recycling your plastic bags? And I was trying to do that, but it was still, she was just, all up in it about it. And I was kind of on this other side of, well, if that consciousness, this positive consciousness, taps us into solutions at the right time, and I had this kind of faith that humanity would pull through and it would all work out. Well, I've thought of her so many times, because I had no intention of working in this field at all, right?
Sure. But
yet I get such a great feeling of being in the field, and I think it's so important. And it's an effect. For me personally, I get to work to move a little piece of this energy thing forward, just my little piece of the world. But I get to do that. And who knew that I could? Who knew that this would be a part of my work in the world, right? But the point being, when we really keep working on ourselves and listening to our intuition and our creativity and our innovation, and let our inside matter, the outside, the solutions become more evident to us. Does that make sense?
Totally. Yes. And I deeply resonate with that, for sure.
Yeah. And so and then it's still, like in this end of life piece, there's things that we need to do. First of all, we have to be aware and just join the discussion and educational awareness to stop landfilling the panels, to make it company policy to recycle damaged make it a company policy. Begin to budget. That there's a cost here, and we budget, because the more panels that are recycled, the cost can go down. The more people recycle, then our costs can go down because of having more. And then, supporting the legislation for these kind of recycling policies. And again, creating an end of life plan. Think about it. Like what we think about, we're going to create a solution for. So it's like, let's think about it. Okay. And then, plan ahead, budget for it. And call Janette Freeman at Fabtech.
Right?
Yeah.
Totally. I'm totally going to do that.
I'm a lot of fun, and we can figure something out. I go back and forth. Like, what do I need to do? Do I need to get you more money for those panels? If I can, I will. Let's figure it out. Where can we ship it to that it's going to cost less for shipping? What do we need to do? So it's like we're making it up as we go in some aspects and trying to help people make that decision for recycling.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the whole industry, the whole clean energy industry as a whole there's a little bit of making it up as we go along.
Yeah.
Like we're trying to figure this all out. And so that's okay. Like
it is
you don't
okay.
You don't know how to write an end of life plan? That's okay. We're all making it up. And you can call Janette and she'll help you make that plan. I was going to just real quick talk about, one of your points was supporting legislation for recycling. And I didn't want to let that go by because we've had several conversations about that sort of thing here on Power Flow, and that getting involved in showing support for legislation is something that everyone can do. Every one of us, whether we're in the industry, adjacent to the industry, or just a regular old consumer, touches energy. We're all consumers of energy, and we should all be concerned about what legislation goes through. And so have you seen, what have you seen in terms of policy making that either regular people can support, normal consumers, or and that means us all really, or specifically industry professionals can support?
Well, it is such an early stage. I can't even say exactly what legislation, except for we've seen things like in California, they were able to reduce. They used to have solar panels were classified as hazardous waste, and it made it very difficult to transport and expensive. And so that was downgraded to a universal waste, which makes it much more doable to be able to transport and store and that sort of thing. So there's that. There's lots of talk and lots of discussion about landfill bans and that sort of thing. But I think there's a lot. SEIA is really a player in this and is doing such good work in working in Washington. And really, it's like the infrastructure bill right now, very, very important for things moving forward. There's a lot of talk out there for the whole big piece of the energy that's going to move it forward. And then that will start to support, the other things like the recycling. So Department of Energy is doing a lot behind the scenes to try to get research, a lot of research that's happening right now as far as end of life and what's going to be the best, what's going to help it move forward. So that, and what legislation is going to help move forward. So much more in the planning right now.
And of course, SEIA refers to the Solar Energy Industries Association, which just does a ton of great work with advocacy and with keeping their finger on the pulse of industry trends and how we can move the industry forward to be, even cleaner, make sure that we're responsible as we all make it up as we go along. Well, let's see. I wanted to say that this has been completely delightful in absolutely every way. And I have learned a ton from you. So I really appreciate that. I intend to advise my own developer clients, to advise my own site hosts, to be thinking about end of life and to even, make a space for an end of life plan, even if it's simple. even if it's not completely fleshed out, but to make space in their awareness for that to happen. And so you've converted one person here who didn't think about it as much as she probably should have prior to today. And I encourage the professionals listening to do the same. Like, how can you engage with your projects so that clients and sites are thinking about end of life?
And I would say that every one of them probably right now have a minimum of a pallet of damaged panels sitting in some warehouse or sitting on the field or sitting someplace, right? And that's the perfect way to start, right? Is to just like call me and what have you got and what is it going to cost, or what are they worth? A lot of times I was like, just send them to me. Let's see what we can do with those. So there's a way to start without having to start right where we are, because the exercise that you go through for the couple of pallets or 100 panels, the exercise that you go through is going to inform you for the future.
Exactly. The way you stop making it up is that you actually go and
do something. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So it's easier if you just do something little first.
Beautiful. So if and when our listeners need to get in contact with Fabtech and you, Janette, what's the best way to do that?
Well, Fabtech is the website is a good way, and that's fabtech.net, fabtech.net. And my information is on there. And of course, email is good, jfreeman@fabtech.net. J. Freeman. And of course, LinkedIn, where I live. So you can find me. You can find me on LinkedIn, Janette Freeman.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, definitely, listeners, get in touch. I hope that you have enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. Thank you for joining us again. We really appreciate your time listening here today. We don't take it for granted. And we'll see you next time here on the Power Flow podcast at the whiteboard for more joyful innovation.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Power Flow podcast. If you enjoyed the conversation, please share the episode with other innovators, leave us a positive review, and subscribe to Power Flow on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find show notes for this episode, more great conversations, Power Flow merchandise, and more at powerflowpodcast.com. Power Flow is hosted by Amy Simpkins, produced by Devin Shonchuk, and managed by Laura Novak. See you next time here at the whiteboard.